Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good
Evening.
evening. How is everybody tonight? Just a little wave, just a little wave. Ah, thank you all for taking the time to join DAS Provide Cultural Arts Incubator as we welcome you to another episode of Tipping Back and Tilting Forward. 25 years gone too soon. Part of the Time Crossroads series online. We dedicate and offer you conversations with curators, artists, and diasporic cultural producers. I want to acknowledge the land on which we do this work. And this is the homeland of the first peoples of Miami, the Tequesta tribes, the Seminole tribes, and the Mississauga tribes. We honor and respect the elders of the past and present whose original home is here. I'm Rosie Gordon-Wallace, president of Diaspora Vibe Cultural Arts Incubator and curator of the traveling exhibition Intersectionality Diaspora Art from the Creole City, presently mounted in the Miami Design District, 4200 4040 Northeast 2nd Avenue, and it runs through May 31st. Folks, put on your seatbelts. Tonight is going to be really special. I'm also the consultant of Art of Black Miami and the curator of one of the curators of Illuminate Carl Gable's team. Lance Fung is our chief curator. That opens tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in Carl Gables. And my most recent appointment has been to the National Young Arts Board of Directors. And
Whoa!
so I'm going to be working my little tushy off. But tonight, it is with great excitement that I invite you to join this conversation. Narrative Installation Culture as Currency, moderated by Kim Yantis. Joining Kim tonight is Katrina Coombs, Juan, Erman, Gonzalez, Caroline Holder, and Evelyn Pulitzer. Kim, let me introduce you properly so that the audience can know who they have and the joy of whom they're going to talk to this evening. Kim is a visual artist first and foremost, cultural programs administrator, and a grant writer. She has worked with DVCAI as an administrator supporting our projects and activities since 2019. Kim holds an MFA from the Florida FIU, Florida International University, and a BFA from Moore College, Art and Design for Women. We're fortunate to have her based in Miami for the past 20 years. And she's worked as an instructor at Florida International University and Miami-Dade College and served as cultural arts curator for the Deering Estate from 2012 to 2018, which is where I met Kim. She volunteers to review grants. Kim, they need to pay us, but we both volunteer to review grants in both Miami-Dade and Broward counties in Florida. As a visual artist, Kim specializes in collaborative projects, producing cloth-based works and costuming since 2008. Her collaborative project, Suiting Up for the Future, with artist Lucinda Lindemann, is a line of sustainable garments using rebuilt and deconstructed suits. If you have not seen them, you should. Together, they create and performances that offer solutions to sea level rise, plastic pollution, and our waste producing culture. Friends and family, artists the world over, I introduce you to Kim Yantis. Kim, over to you.
Oh, how sweet. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Great to be with you guys here tonight. I'm really excited because we have a lot to celebrate. All four artists are featured at the Intersectionality exhibit, which just in Miami, and it's an amazing wing home for many of the artists. So everyone's in the show. We have some works that are in the exhibit and also some with that the artist wanted to share. So I'm going to go around like a little round table, and I'm going to start with Caroline Holder, who does incredible ceramic work and many different types of installations. Caroline, if you could just tell everyone how many years you've worked with Diaspora Vibe, where you first exhibited, um, and then also what do you want people to take away from your work? So first, tell us how long you've been with Rosie.
I met Rosie at the Puck Building. I was in a separate exhibition. It was a thing called Art Off the Main, and there were a number of different galleries and booths who were showing there. And I was showing actually with somebody else. And I happened to walk by Rosie's gallery space, and I was just completely struck because I think it was the first time that I've ever really seen what I would call as contemporary Caribbean art. I grew up with there was a lot of palm trees, there were a lot of monkeys and a lot of pineapples. And I was so thrilled to see something that spoke to me. I had just come out of graduate school. I had just started grappling with ideas of identity because I was in New York and I moved to Canada, and I realized that I wanted to figure out how I was going to be seen. And I realized that I didn't think I was really present in that narrative. So to see that unfolding was wonderful. So 2005. And what was the other question?
Oh, this is not
Was
really.
that it?
What do you want people to
Oh,
take
what do
away
I
from
want
your
people?
on a personal level?
Um,
Just for what joy does this bring you? This kind of work.
I think it's about connection. I think it's, I've lived in I've lived in 3 countries, I think in 5 cities. I've moved around a lot. And I think that you always have your differences, but there are always these levels in which you can connect with people. There's a human level. It just transcends race, color, gender. And my work sort of traffics in the ordinary in a way. But I just really want people to connect. And sometimes I think, oh, I've made this thing and it's kind of silly. It's just trivial or it's not important. And then people will be like, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that feeling of recognition, that feeling of, wow, yeah, I get that. That's kind of what I'm going for.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And now Evelyn Pulitzer we met her in Miami years ago. She's from Uruguay. How long have you actually worked with Rosie, Evelyn? And tell us about it.
Hi, good evening. I think I'm one of the new additions to Rosie's pool of artists, but I want to tell the story of how I met her because it was in an exhibit at the Laundromat art space. And when I got to install my art there, the place that I was given was the exit, the emergency exit, like the last corridor to your left. So I was kind of discouraged, and I said, oh, nobody's going to see my art unless there's an emergency. And that night, the place was packed, and the emergency exit got all filled up with people, and there came Rosie and Katrina. And that's how I met Rosie. So I guess never underestimate the power of an emergency exit. Anybody that's listening out there.
And can you just talk on a personal level, what sharing your work with the public means to you? What kind of satisfaction, what kind of connection do you look for with both collectors and audience, by the way, because we're talking about culture as currency this evening. So we could also talk about people that might take our artwork home and enjoy it in perpetuity as well.
Yeah, I think I try to tackle serious issues, but also always with maybe a playful or a whimsy turn. And I think the public gets that, and I get good feedback from the public, and I hope to keep on transmitting that through my art.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Katrina Coombs coming to us from Jamaica, and I've met her several times already in Miami as part of when she presented as part of the DVCAI Artist in Residence program at the Betsy Hotel. So hello and welcome, Katrina. Tell us about and it doesn't need to be a number of years, but your experiences with DVCAI briefly, if you don't mind.
Well, my first experiences with DVCAI was when I was a student at Edna College, and they came down with ice. I think that was probably like 2000, probably like 2004, between 2004 and 2008, somewhere around that bracket. And they had their exhibit at the Revolution Gallery, and it blew me away at that point in time, because I think it gave me, as a young artist, as an artist exploring textiles and fiber, a vision, in a sense where, initially there aren't many textile artists down here who are constantly and consistently practicing, except for one major person, Margaret Stanley. But when I saw those works, I saw where I could go, and one piece stuck out to me, which even makes me even more honored to even be on this panel, was one of Erman's piece with the little shoes, the little red shoes going to the painting. And that has always stuck in my head. I don't know why. But that's kind of where my relation started as a student. And then it developed as time went along, where they came down the next initial, I think in 2012, and they were having an exhibition at the Cage Gallery, and I was a curatorial assistant, and we kind of started blossoming from there in terms of the relationship, where now I've become an artist amongst the collection of artists that they have.
Oh, fantastic. And anything you want to share about your practice, or what the practice means to you, or the exhibition? Go for it.
Well, for my practice, even with just the concept of narrative installation, my practice on a whole, it is a story. It is telling the story of the life of a woman, myself initially, but then even on a broader sense, as it relates to the struggles and relations that, as a woman attempting to find her identity and understand her body, it becomes this kind of universal conversation in relation to even the medium as fiber, as a spiritual element that is so domestic and so related to the woman and her identity, how she exists, but also to the womb as a sense of comfort and comfort. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. And I'm going to welcome Juan Erman Gonzalez, and I'm going to answer the first question for you, because during our dialogue, Erman, you said, I have been with Rosie since the beginning. So I assume that is almost 25 years, and take it away.
I didn't say since the beginning. I said since 2002. Since my
beginning.
Since my beginning.
Oh, okay.
Let's not confuse it. Prior to working with Rosie, I did not have a visual career. I found Rosie looking for artists. An artist out of Ohio had a residency at Art Center, South Florida. And I met her through the South Florida Fiber Artists, a group that's now defunct, but that put together fiber-centric exhibitions, including traveling catalog exhibitions. And this lady had come down to a residence in Art Center, South Florida, and we meet through this group, and she challenges me to bring a Cuban American fiber show to Ohio. And I'm like, you must think there's like a grandmother knitting in every corner here, but it's actually very much a dying thing. And I'll do my very best. So I took it on. I had never curated anything, but there's no challenge with my name on it that I'm gonna run away from. And this, I knew, was gonna be very much of a learning curve and a real great experience. It could be theatrical, it could be whatever I wanted it to be, because I was leading it. So not having any background in curation, I came from the fashion world, and I treated it very much like ordering for a department store, where a lot of ethnicities, a lot of sizes, and a lot of tastes are going to come spend their money. And we came up that way with deep blue Caribbean American statements. And I changed it to Caribbean American statements because at the beginning, I called a couple of Cuban artists, friends of mine from the 80s generation that came here, Mariel or post Mariel, and they did not want a fucking thing to do with the hyphen. They were not Cuban American. And if the show was going to be Cuban American, I could go to hell type of a thing. They were Cuban and they would participate in a Caribbean American show.
Erman, if you would briefly, just kind of, what do you like your viewer to, or collector, as we were talking about, to take away from your work? What kind of
I
feeling?
think my collector has always taken away a relationship. Like I get to talk to them directly.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because I strongly believe
Of the changed so much because of the pandemic and how you're able to interact with people.
I'm so sorry, I'm hearing voices.
Okay. I'm not, if you want to put questions in the chat, please, just so we don't overspeak. Thank you, Erman. So let's go
Well, I
back.
didn't get to answer you because the voice from the future came on, but it doesn't matter.
Well, we're coming back around. We're coming back around. This was the intro.
Okay.
Thank you, Erman. Caroline, let's go back and just kind of recap the lovely conversation we had. I believe it was on Sunday about your work. Feel free to run with the question or just talk to folks about your work. When talking about you don't mind to run the first image, yeah, we were talking about artwork that's in our current exhibition, Insomniac's Menagerie. And you described that the piece was a little bit about these thoughts that kind of popped out of your head and started making you started making a dog on these pillows. And there, some messages are kind of intergenerational, some are about race, motherhood, aging, all these kinds of really interesting topics. So, could you tell us a little bit more about this piece in its totality?
Sure. If you could go back to the installation slide, or not. I first started making these pillows. I was asked to do a piece in a call to artists in a show called Reawakening, and I did not want to do. I had, well, not that recently, but I was a relatively new mother. I guess once you're a mother, it's always new because everything is new and different. And I thought of Reawakening in terms of the fact that I could never get any sleep because I kept having this ticker tape of thoughts going through my head. And so that was when the pillow form started as a way of sort of externalizing things that I was thinking about. And so the first one in this series, the Insomniac's Menagerie, is the artist's pillow. And it's basically, it's really about how, as an artist, you always doubt yourself and you think it's so unoriginal, you think it's so awful, but you can't stop doing it. And you just keep it's like picking a scab. It's like, you got to make this stuff, but is it current? Is it critical? Is it interesting even? Is it worth it? So that was the first one. And then it just kind of kept going. And it kept spilling out, and I kept making other ones. And one of them, I have the little ones and the big ones. One of them is, what am I most afraid of? And it goes for everything from having my son shot by the police to slugs, because I'm definitely afraid of slugs, and it sort of runs the gamut. And this one here, What Do You Mean I'm Not Black? I had a colleague who, we were talking about music, and I believe it was Bohemian Rhapsody that she'd never heard. And she said, "You're not Black anyway, you're Caribbean." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm not Black?" And I tried so much to get over it, and I couldn't. So I kind of had to externalize it in an art piece. And I have a friend who has a line in one of her songs. She's like, "You better not mess with a singer or you'll end up in a song." And that's kind of, it's like, it's sort of a cathartic. But then I showed this at at series exposure has a series, they have a series, and I showed this work, and I was asking people who came up, they're like, oh, this is great. One guy's like, oh my God, all this reading, I can't stand it. And so there's a soundtrack that goes with it. And the soundtrack basically is me reading all of the pillows, but they also overlap. So you have this sense of a stream of consciousness that the sounds play and overlap in your head. And I was asking him, what most resonated with him. And he, I thought he was your average white dude. And he was actually, he pointed to that one, and his voice got really kind of, you hurt. And he said this one. And I just, it's one of those times when you realize that you've touched a nerve and you think it's only your nerve, and it's not. And I realized that it was speaking to him on a very deep level. So that meant a lot to me. And I really like work with text, and I really like objects. So I'm a ceramicist, I would say, by training, and I feel like an object is meant to be handled. And so it's like you put something on the wall and you never really look at it, the back of it, but when you wash a dish, when you hold a cup, you look at the top, the bottom, you're feeling it, and objects want to be touched. So I decorate the backs of the pillows. These objects here, these are based on monkey pots, monkey jars. There's a Barbadian water jug that is earthenware. It's a very humble vessel. It's really traditional. And the way that it functions is that you put water in it, and the unglazed surface evaporates. The water evaporates, and it keeps the water cool. And another fact that I didn't know that Rosie told me is they're also used as safes to keep to keep your stuff. If somebody came to call, you didn't want anybody to know, you'd hide your stuff in the monkey jug. So the way that I'm working with these things here is also they're sort of referencing high art. What I find about being an immigrant is that somehow in your mind, things get conflated. So it's like you have the high-end European Sèvres type potteries that have panels on them, that talk about ownership and land and that kind of thing. So I've taken this really humble form. I've made it unusable because it's about 2 feet high. And then I put a panel on it, and it also, in the colors, it's referring to blue and white china. It's referring to Delft pottery. And also the idea that your message here, any space at all is available for advertising. It's like you can be whoever you want to be. So on this one is.
Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation about these because you started to go into the history of ceramics, but you really made the history of ceramics your own, and just really capturing the essence of the. There's colonialism, there's craftsmanship, there's identity. So I just love seeing these pieces in person. So everybody go check them out. And then into the next image, I selected after we were speaking, bulimic wall hanging with detail. I just had to choose this because for narrative installation, this was a work that I hadn't seen. And it said so much to me. It spoke about the domestic, spoke about womanhood, spoke about our bodies, spoke about, our place in society. So I chose this, and thank you for sharing it with us. If you comment on the piece, if you like, I don't.
Just, I tried to disguise it as being about the eating habits of Americans and make it really non-specific, but the truth is, it's like dealing with, I had an eating disorder growing up, and it's also like it deals with the fact that people in the Caribbean tend to shy away from psychiatric issues, and there's a lot of shame attached to any kind of mental illness or mental trauma. So yeah, eating is hard for everybody. Especially now that we're all stuck at home and we are definitely chained to our refrigerators.
Yes, Caroline, thank you so much. And I want the artists will speak to each other a little bit as we go, and everyone listening, please feel free to put some questions in the chat, and we'll get the last 15 minutes of the talk if we can head there. So we're going to go to Evelyn Pulitzer now. Evelyn, hello. And we're starting with an image of artwork, Every Drop Counts. And it's been in various different forms of installation throughout the 3 exhibitions. Are you there, Ev?
Yes, hi.
Hi, there she is. There she is. So just a couple of questions for you. Your main material is yarn, so we did talk about that quite a bit. And you have kind of a very personal attachment to the material. So I did want to encourage you to share that with everybody. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes, because once I moved here to the States, I started knitting and crocheting and handling yarn again, and I got very drawn in to the yarn that produced in my country in Uruguay, where I always say that there are more sheep than human inhabitants. I think there are like 2 sheep per human being, and the yarn from Uruguay is so soft and so colorful that once I started handling, I couldn't, like, it was love at first sight. I never left it. But talking about this installation, every drop counts, and the subject of today, the narrative installation, I feel like, Caroline, I started here with 1 drop, and then I think I could never stop. So yes, it's narrative, but it's also the process of making and making, and every morning when you wake up, it's just, what am I going to make today? And well, this obviously references all the crises that are in the world about water, no, the excess of water here in Miami and the lack of water in so many other places. But lately, one of the kids that went to see the show in the design district, she said to her mother, "Oh, it looks like nature is crying." So sometimes you get from the kids the actual truth about the narrative, an installation narrative.
Yeah, from the mouth of the US saying. Can you go to the next image, please?
This is at the Gantt Center, and this picture is probably by Roy, that I needed to thank him because he takes great pictures. And this another series of mine, and again started with 1 brick, and then I could never stop. So it kept on going and going. It started with the red one. This wall is called Brick by Brick, and I wanted to start the conversation, but in a soft and warm way. And then I moved on to a little bit more hopeful, the green one called A Ray of Light, and bringing hope, and also because of the green color that I knitted, again, brick by brick.
Yeah, your work is whimsical. It's always fun, and it's labor. It has a series.
Did you say labor intensive? 100%.
Labor intensive.
Yes, 100%. And Katrina is laughing right now because everything in fiber is labor intensive. You start with 1 stitch and you go stitch by stitch, row by row, and then it just keeps on growing. This is another installation that, speaking about narrative installation, it gave me a lot of freedom, because again, these are all hand knit with yarn from my country that was all hand dyed mainly by rural women. That's how the idea of give the rural women that were working with the sheep a job, no? But it was really freeing, because this is I call it a drawing without paper. It's on the wall, and this wall was like 8 feet tall by this is a detail of the thing, by 13 feet long, wide, and it's called Nature's Map. I wanted to put myself into nature's shoes and feel a little bit of what it is to be in nature. And this was done by I mean for an exhibit in Pinecrest Garden called a Braided Nature. And
Evelyn, as we go through the next couple of images, because you've worked also build your own community in Miami, and you co-founded FAMA. While we look at some of the images, because I probably picked, they're beautiful. Why don't you share with kind of your activism and your collective group in Miami with fiber artists?
yes. Okay, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt lonely as an artist in my studio, that we didn't have any place to go. We couldn't visit anybody. So I called 2 other fiber artists from here, from Miami, and a Aurora Molina, and the other one is Alina Rodriguez Rojo. So we joined forces and we formed this FAMA group, Fiber Artists Miami Association. And nowadays we have almost 60 members. And Katrina, I'm sorry, because it's mainly for Miami fiber artists, but Erman, please join us. Because it's only growing and growing, and it was like a different turn in my art practice, because it showed me, first of all, the power of the group, that it's so important, and also the shy away of the me that we artists have so much, and the like getting closer to the we, and I thought that was a nice lesson for my practice. And it's still going. We are right now working with the city of Miami Beach, and they want to get us a nice one of those empty places on Lincoln Road, because we are 50 artists. So more to come.
Congratulations, and always lovely working with you, because you are just always there for the occasion, and
yeah,
with great spirit. So thank you so much, Evelyn. Next, let's go back to you, Katrina Coombs from Jamaica. Hello again.
Hi.
There it is. We had a fun dialogue, and your work is both personal and also very universal. So we had talked about how I was very moved in your statement, how you said the words autobiographical and also professional. Can you kind of speak about that aspect?
Okay, so for me, the fiber in itself is just a medium. Fabric is something that just lives with us. It holds our experiences of a moment, of a time. And with creating, when I create, it holds those experiences. And for me, it has been a journey of speaking to what issues I have faced as a woman. I mean, for example, this piece that we're currently looking at, Invasion, it was really carrying me back to where I found myself focusing on the other, whether if it is an external person, or whether if external person or object, or even just how we other our own body, how we other an internal body as a woman, or womb becomes this other creature. When we're seeing our cycle, we completely transform. Or the saints here in Jamaica, when we see a cycle, it's the red auntie that's visiting. So it's not us who's going through a process. We immediately separate ourselves from it. But even just how that notion of this activity that's constantly happening to you, how it takes control of you, how it takes control of your mental capacity, your physical ability, and how we move through. And it's a process that is not necessarily spoken to. There isn't much of a voice that's given to it. And I think within my practice, I try to give that voice through all the experiences that I can speak to, at least at this moment, as it pertains to whether if your cycle, whether if you have a child, you've lost a child, what are the breaking down that happen? Because I mean, your body's constantly attacking itself, tearing itself apart, but yet it's also healing, you know, and it becomes this means of invasive notion that controls and consumes, that's similar to even the material of fabric where you immediately when you're born, you're covered in it, you're enclosed in it. And it's this object that gives us this sense of safety, sense of security. That's similar to what the womb provided when we were in the womb, you know, as well as the maternal figure that one may have and turn to. So for me, you know, the fabric, it speaks to that of the woman's identity and tells the stories. I mean, for me, initially, the initial first piece, and even with this video, that clip that we have here, it was really looking at my own loss of a child, and how I was now able to allow the medium to become my comfort, but also my voice, you know, in speaking to what is, this is who I am. These are conversations that we don't have. Okay, you've lost a child. Okay, people are aware of that. You're on pins and needles around them. You're not necessarily having any conversation to find that healing, you know, or even just to know it's okay. It's okay to be at a certain point, mentally, physically. It's okay to break down if you want to. And just finding that comfort zone and allowing it to speak through my work to the audience, so then they can then now have that dialogue, which is uncomfortable, but yet find a sense of comfort in it.
Beautiful. My next question. Do you mind if we Wandering Womb 2018, Katrina Coombs, if you could. There we go. Wow, thank you. There we go. And if you could go to the next image. Thank you, Katrina. Yeah, the performance is very, very powerful. People, put some questions in there. And then we'll come back around. Other chieftain, is that correct? Is this piece? Katrina?
Mother.
Mother, I'm sorry, yeah, Mother Chieftain is also in the intersectionality exhibit. And are you, for your materials, are you using primarily a certain type of fiber, or using various types through these pieces?
There are various types. I mean, initially, you work with the medium that's immediately available to you. But for me, it's just the fiber that exists. It doesn't matter whether if it's natural or synthetic, it exists and it functions as how it's needed to be. So I play around with all mediums. I will incorporate other objects in as well, because sometimes I like to play with mirrors and beads, specifically the cowrie shell, and its relation to even the woman. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And they're going to roll through a couple of, I picked two They're very beautiful and I wanted to share them. So thank you. And just so many different iterations, and each piece really feels like it's a site for as well. So I see the work as just extremely narrative, even if it is mounted on the wall as opposed to a space. So thank you, Katrina. We're going to move on to Erman, and then I'm going to encourage the artists to speak to each other if they have any questions for each other. So Juan Erman Gonzalez, welcome again. And I wanted to, if you want to just talk about your piece in the intersectionality exhibit, we love it. You just tell folks a little bit about this piece.
I have to go back briefly to the time that I've worked with Rosie, because this particular installation, for such a grandiose curatorial effort of somebody that I've worked with for so many years, it's actually a compilation of components from installations that I have done at Diaspora Vibe Gallery and with DVCAI throughout the years. So basically, this El Camino o parte de él, the path or part of it, although I prefer not to translate my titles, it's a celebration of my experience and the path that I've traveled with Diaspora Vibe Gallery. I first got there as a pseudo curator, like I briefly discussed, and that went very well. But at the time that I was showing the slides and the preparation of who had jumped on the project and what they were presenting, that I was presenting to Rosie in order to find more Caribbean and Caribbean American artists for this exhibition that was slated to open in St. Petersburg, Florida. She looked at my book and said, "Who's this work? I want to work with this person." And she was pointing at my work. So immediately she took my work to Aruba, I believe, was the trip that they were taking then. And then I prepare a whole series that I was working on at the time that's titled Life, It's Not a Dress Rehearsal. And this was written mantras, and it had clothing made out of ceramic in the front, and they were all shadow box. But it wasn't just clothing that was informed by my pattern making abilities, having come off of 7th Avenue and having had a successful fashion design career that was actually international at the point. But I was imbuing these garments with humanity only to put them in a box. And coats were hugging each other and trying to reach out of the box. And there was something written in the background that was usually contrasting to what was visually happening, because very much like Miss Holder's pillows, my mantras and my writing are this: I cannot sleep because I have this ticker tape parade going on, you know, around the clock, with 4 different sketchbooks on my nightstand and a tape recorder in case I scream something, which has happened, and all kinds of things. And that's how my artwork gets informed, by experience, by the experiences that I live. I am Cuban and I'm a man and I'm all these different things, but I cannot fix any of those things. So my work, I find it to be very narcissistic, and I'm okay with that, because ultimately it connects with all the other people out there that have traveled the path, the ceramic shoes that were actually cast on people, some of which had Auschwitz tattoos in their arms, and people with very varied migratory experiences. That's where the shoes were cast, and the shoes were also made from deconstructed shoes that I found at the beach. So these things start to go in my head, like, did they make it? Were they balseros that we lost at sea? Was a couple getting jiggy here last night? They left their shoes. What is it? And then I started using these shoes, found shoes, as patterns, and giving the illusion even of knowing these people, since I had made a narrative in my head to include them in this walk, in this path. So part of my cultural currency is being biracial and living in a family that didn't necessarily appreciate that their firstborn was artistic and effeminate. So my story, it's not totally different than anybody else's, but since I brought myself fully to it, I find that other people come talk to me and they see what I'm saying, but they're able to twist it and turn it and personalize it. And that's more of a global conversation, even though it started very island, very Caribbean, very much with a rationing book. I mean, what do I do with these pieces of fabric that are worth their weight in gold when you have absolutely nothing, and you got to break down your grandfather's coat to make it smaller in order to have a coat, and all these different things. So my materials can be polyester, they can have shit stains on them. I dumpster dive, and I'm proud of it. I like to recycle. I like to use post-production goods. For this particular piece, los que, and then in parentheses, no llegaron. A lot of my work has options. There are no absolutes. Some people make it, some people don't make it. And in the geography, how these shoes are dancing, you realize that some are coming down the ladder, some are going up the ladder. It becomes a very real as well as a very spiritual thing. And for this piece, I had a Facebook call where I asked for donations of green clothing. It had to be clothing. I didn't care that I didn't care what the fabric was. It had to be green and it had to be clothing, because I wanted to break it down into this feel, but still have the essence of the wearers. I didn't dry clean anything. It was really like whoever donated garments to this piece, los que no llegaron, or los que llegaron, which was actually talking about wet foot, dry foot, and my imagined stories of who didn't make it at all and became like, shark food or whatever, which is very sad, but very real when you're fleeing in dire circumstances. So I wanted this mound to have the essence of the donors.
So Erman, in your artist statement, you basically mentioned this, consider all these materials as gifts, because perhaps you started with little, but also have always held that as a value, that all these materials really add up to something. I wanted to, in the next slides, I selected some figurative narrative pieces that you've made, which I just adore. And in some of them, you are the main fictional character as well. So I thought it was important for narrative installation to also
I include myself.
Yeah, these stories.
I include myself in my narrative. I'm not talking about anybody else. This is me. This is my family. We went to the park on Sundays. We had basic entertainment, like flying a little homemade kite that I taught my daughter how to make, exactly how I've been taught how to make, except maybe hers was a fancy crepe paper and not, newspaper that had been crumbled and wetted for it to be softer. But it's very much like me and my wife and my son and my daughter, and we're mutating into birds, because this is part of the egg mutation series that started in about 2015, when my mother was terminally ill and suffering with like Alzheimer's that attacked her to the 300%. So I started making whatever conversation I could get responses to, and taping it and writing it down. And one day she said, "We're just empty cages." And I'm like, okay, so we're empty cages. Where are the birds? Who are the birds? And it led me into this world of my imagination where, since the cages were empty, the birds were the freest they could be. And that was the most fantastical feeling that I could imbue to a human.
I love I love where your stories go. There's always so many paths to enter in. So thank you so much, Erman.
Well, my stories are mine to tell. And if somebody's listening and they're relating to it, I've been successful.
Wonderful, thank you. We're gonna start the portion where we answer some of the questions from. I see right away Robbie Bell wrote the question about what is the term culture as currency. So I did share the definition with our artists before we started. So in a more formal definition, it is from a French sociologist, and the idea is basically that we have this cultural stuff that can be exchanged for other stuff. So very often people who perhaps are immigrants are connecting with other folks in ways that is not necessarily financial, connecting with culture, becoming part of a peer group through artwork, specifically in this context. So if anyone wanted to speak more eloquently to that or address that, please.
You did a good job. There's some questions there, Kim. Caroline Holder is asking Erman, can you tell us the significance of the recurring chairs, Erman?
Yes, I can. And when I went to Sakatar, and you remember that experience, we cooked in order to have funds to go to Sakatar. I mean, Diaspora Vibe has been supportive, not only supportive of my ideas, but like inventive of my results. And I'm extremely grateful for that. This is like my family. I never showed with anybody else because I only started showing art as a 45-year-old man. So chairs are la silla del retiro, the retirement chair, the wheelchair, dad's chair, a place where we sit. And in that case, it takes our form. There's a symbiosity to a human sitting in the chair in a place of rest where, how tired are you and can you go forth? Or is this your last spot of the day? But when the chair turns into a ladder, like it so often does, we are now talking definitely the comings and goings of the spiritual world. Having been raised in very Afrocentric spiritual practices, a chair and a ladder are like a plane, but on a different plane.
Yeah.
So it's an empty chair. It's very much a human that's no longer with us.
You know, Erman, you know, Dionne Warwick sings, a chair is not a chair unless there's someone sitting there. A home is not a home unless someone is there. Your chairs, we showed that installation with the chair and the ladder in the Harvey B. Gantt Center. Each iteration of the exhibition allows us to expand, and sometimes we have to contract depending on the space. But folks would look at it. I mean, and one day I was there and one of the staff members asked about the significance of your shoes coming up to the chair and going up to the ladder. And I said to her, in Jamaica, we call that shady rest, you know, when we are in shady rest. I mean, I joke with you all the time that I am in shady rest, kind of just waiting for the helicopter to come. But I don't want to trivialize the work, the response for your work, the works of the artists around from the Cochrane in DC to Harvey B. Gantt in North Carolina, and now to Miami. We just opened on Friday, so many have not come to see it yet. But the response has been really wonderful. And I just want to say that it's been 25 years of work. And to the newest, Evelyn, and to Claudia, who is probably not on this call. Claudia is from Panama and Venezuela. Where you are from matters to us. And so when you come to the exhibition, Caroline Holder, your name is there, and you are Barbadian, you're Bajan first, Canadian and US. We give you where your grandparents are from primarily. And I wanted to sneak in Jamaica under Caroline Holder's name because her mom is Jamaican, and I don't want to say was because our spirits are with us every day. But you could, at the Design District, folks have been coming in. They don't come upstairs. I'm talking everyday, ordinary folks now, not those dressed up to come to the exhibition. And they go and they turn themselves to the flag and take their selfies only beside the countries that matter to them.
Oh, wow.
So the importance of our immigrant existence is nationalistic. We all want to wave our flags. And yes, it is a hyphenated flag. Jamaica, US, Uruguay, US, Cuba, US. There's a question for you, Erman, as well. When did you leave Cuba is a question that I lost who asked it. Wait, I'm going to find it. Renee asked it.
I left Cuba when I was 10, and I'm 65.
Ooh, ooh, you're older than me. I'm just
Sure, sister.
my brother, I got your back. I have a question. I have a question. You guys have been around me a long time, and you know I have this affinity to text art. When I was a student at UWI doing microbiology, I used to run away with Annie Hamilton, whom Katrina knows. Annie Hamilton was head of your textile department at Edna Manley School of Performing and Visual Arts. And she taught me to tie-dye. I would run there and learn the different things and the different courses. So I have this real affinity to fiber. Why fiber? For the fiber artist. And Caroline, your affinity to clay.
We have a question for Caroline as well to talk about the process working in text and ceramics. But that's
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. What a team. What a team.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the question is. Just
so can you talk about your process for working with text in ceramics? Your pillows remind Danielle coats of woodcuts, and how you incorporate text.
Sure. I actually before I came to clay, I was a printmaker, and I did a lot of work in lino, black and white. I did a lot of carving, and before that, because I have had multiple careers, I was also a graphic designer. So I learned a lot about typography. I learned a lot about text. I've always loved work that incorporates words, and I do some writing, and I feel like you can put a lot on there, and I actually just like the way that letters look. So I use the process that I use on my pillows is called sgraffito. It's where you carve around each letter. So rather than writing on the clay, each letter is drawn, so it becomes actually an artistic form in and of itself. So.
Thank you. Caroline, a point of privilege. Tell them about your monkey jars. I was there in New York with you. Remember when we were holding our breath and holding our stomachs in as you took it out of the kiln? Tell them a bit about the anxiety around those two pieces. Sure.
Well, the thing is that when you work in graduate school, you can sort of fulfill your dreams. You make all these big things. And I was in New York, and I've been working quite small for some time. And I decided that I really wanted to make a piece that privileged a Barbadian form. But the monkey pots that they're at home are beautifully thrown. I am a ceramicist, but I'm not a brilliant potter. So I actually constructed a a shape. I made a sculpture of the pot out of cardboard. So I constructed it so you can see like the shapes of the cardboard. And then I made a cast, a big plaster cast. It was like, I realized I could barely lift it onto the table. It was super heavy. So I'm rolling this thing around. And then I press molded a bunch of clay into it. And then I went to Barbados for a month because I didn't want to take it out too quickly. So I wrapped it really tightly and walked away. And Rosie had asked me to do this show, and I was hoping to have something that was significant that I could show. And you know, in ceramics, you always make things twice because there's always one that's going to possibly break. And I just remember trying to ease this thing apart. And we were talking, and she was doing her visit, and I was kind of easing, and she was talking, and I was easing, and suddenly it came out whole. And it was like Christmas.
Magical,
It
magical.
was the most exciting thing.
Folks, Kim, where are you? I didn't mean to usurp your moderator post. Where you gone?
She might have just other. Where you are? There you are.
Hi. There are so many things, like I want every artist to talk to every other artist. I want every artist to talk to the public. So before we wrap up, anything that our panel would like to say to each other? I think some of you have had the chance to work together and some have not, but anybody, Katrina?
I want briefly to answer to Rosie why fiber. And for me, fiber is because it's something soft, malleable, adaptable, and I can work with anything that's soft. And I think it was proven now during quarantine and everything that fibers are very adaptable to change or to stay home and not working with what you have. And I always quote Joseph Campbell that says that every human being should find their bliss. And I think I found my bliss in working with fibers. So that's my answer, why fiber.
Beautiful.
I don't just work with fiber.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would say that working with clay, I mean, it comes back down to the tactile. It feels good. It smells good. It's malleable. The only thing about clay is it's like being the double bass in the band, because when you have to carry it or pack it, you know, you're really looking at the jeweler with a jaundiced eye. But it's just, you know, you're playing in dirt. It's a primal instinct that you have as a kid, and it never goes away. It's a big old pile of dirt.
Beautiful.
For me, the fiber, there's just so much that you can do with threads and yarns. It's the simplest, most subtlest object and can be the strongest thing that you can use. And then you can do fiber, you can build, you can paint, you can sculpt, you can do almost anything with it. I think that's the most marvelous thing for me with it. Just exploring it, trying to figure out just how much I can bend it and mold it and shape it. So for me, it just has this really spiritual connection when you're making, you know. I'd love to be a part of your community, Evelyn, just to kind of just have that community relation with the material, because it in itself becomes a community when you're surrounded by all of these yarns while you're weaving and all these fabrics just going all over. But yeah, fibers, it's it.
I would like to take the opportunity.
String, like Rosie calls it, string.
String. Vanilla string.
Yeah.
Exactly. I want to take the opportunity to thank all of the artists, because it was such a pleasure getting to know you better. And most of all, I want to do a big thank you to, can you see me? A thank you to Rosie Gordon-Wallace for all of her work. Diaspora Cultural Arts Incubator. We would love to thank our sponsors for our current exhibition, the Miami Design, Claire Brukel and Craig Robb, the Harvey B. Gant Center, Corcoran School of Arts and Designs, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Andy Warhol Foundation, the Ford Foundation, NPN National Performance Network, IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services. And a gigantic thank you to Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, the Cultural Affairs Council, and the mayor of Miami for our ongoing work for 25 years, as well as the State of Florida Division of Cultural Affairs and our dear friends at the GMCVB Art of Black Miami. So thank you and good night. And we never have enough time to share beautiful